Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of Jerry's Take on China. I really appreciate your comments, and I try and get back to all of you when you do comment, and I especially appreciate those of you who share the videos. So please like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Western economists keep getting it wrong. The collapse of China has been around for years. Books have been written, articles have been published, videos have been produced for at least 20 years. And they keep being reiterated, and always for different reasons. James A. Robinson suggests it's because the people in China aren't free. Peter Zien suggests it's because of the aging population. Oh, he also believes the only reason China has grown strong is because of the freedoms and protections offered by the US Navy. When they stop protecting the waters around China, China will collapse for different reasons. Gordon Chang claimed in 2001 that would happen by 2011. Then 12 years ago, he suggested it was only a year away. He's still suggesting it. More specifically, according to his own website, Gordon doesn't even know why it will collapse, just that it will because of the inefficiency of state-run enterprises and the inability of the Communist Party to create an open and democratic society. Others suggest the debt to GDP ratio is too high and China can no longer sustain the level of debt, which actually happens to be considerably lower than that of the United States of America. Australia's Lowy Institute wrote an interesting article called The Collapse of the Chinese Collapse Theory, and that's what I'm talking about today. China continues, even through the pandemic, to grow. And the world constantly wonders why they get this so wrong. How does China lie its way out of this collapse every year? Clearly, for them, the only reasons China reports positive growth is because they're lying about it. For many, many years, we've been inundated with reports about how the authoritarian government will accept no failures in the reporting of statistics. Everyone is afraid to stand up to Beijing and afraid they'll be removed from their posts, perhaps even shot if they get it wrong. Well, if that were true, then all the predictions would have been correct and the economy would have collapsed, except it didn't. So let's take the Western lenses off and look at how it really happens. The first and most obvious thing is that those reports of authoritarianism were wrong. Quite obviously, China has a very different governance system to the West, and the West don't like that. But what they don't like really doesn't matter to the Chinese people because they do like it. There's no way on earth a country could develop the way China has if everyone was forced to work, if everyone was kept in dire working conditions, and if they had no free time or hated their employers, hated their boss, hated their country. So there's one theory that we should put straight to bed. Chinese people may not live in utopia, but they are for the most part gainfully employed and relatively happy with the system they have. Just because the same system doesn't work in another country doesn't mean it's a bad system, it just means it's a different one. The aging population theory is correct, but an aging population hasn't caused a collapse yet and isn't likely to in the near future. People have forgotten. There's a culture here of looking after the elderly. It isn't an imposition, it's a responsibility that is accepted and in many cases welcomed. I've heard Chinese people say their parents cared for them for many years, now it's time to repay them. And for example, people in China give gifts to their parents, not just on the parents' birthday, but on their own birthday, as a way of saying thank you to them for all the pain that they experienced. People here also save and invest for their retirement, something the West hasn't done too well, with many social security countries struggling with huge pension deficits. This could easily cause a financial crisis, but it's less likely to in China. There won't be enough jobs because of automation to support the aging population. That's one of the claims, except that there will be less people working and more machines taking over the mundane work. China's already addressed this future concern. as it is right now the leader of AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, online healthcare, investments totaling billions of dollars have created AI towns, an infrastructure which does help an aging population to live a meaningful life. These investments recognize a problem and are providing working solutions to it already. In their West, they may very well be an aging population that is discarded and forgotten about or too expensive to maintain. Already, Canada is offering assisted exits if it all gets too much. This isn't likely to happen in a society such as China with Confucian values, which include, among other things, filial piety. Which brings us to the last of the debt to GDP ratio theories. And yes, there is no doubt it's high, but there's also no doubt at all it's well spent. In the last 10 years, China has built more than double the number of universities that exist in the UK. There are 42,000 kilometers of high-speed rail and more coming, with over 11,000 new stations built to accommodate them in the last 20 years. People say this system runs at a loss. Maybe it does, but they don't take into account the amount of GDP added by the ability to travel so freely and quickly to places that were once inaccessible. The World Bank acknowledges that China's poverty alleviation scheme is a roaring success, but economists and headlines around the world ask, at what cost? The simple fact is that the cost is unimportant. China has opened economic opportunities to the 770 plus million people lifted out of poverty, opportunities that weren't available to them 20 years ago, and in doing so, China has created a very large number of new tax-paying citizens. Where a region was once impoverished and a drain on society, that region now adds to society. It might take another 20 or even 50 years to repay the costs, and this is something that Western economists can't grasp. China isn't looking for a 1 to 3 year return on investment. China thinks a generation ahead, as are the parents of children born in those communities who not only go on to become middle-income earners, but also to look after their aging parents in 20 to 30 years' time. So if we stop thinking like Western economists or journalists for a moment, we might actually see something special. A society that has constantly improved over the last 50 years, and one that thinks beyond the next election cycle by planning years into the future to avoid these foolish predictions. So I don't think China is going to collapse anytime soon. Maybe you think differently. Please feel free to leave me a comment and I will get back to you. Thanks very much once again for watching Jerry's Take on China.